Maybe you walked in and you saw all this stuff and you thought, you know, that's nice, but that's a bit much. This is actually an illustration of the church today. And what we're kind of talking about is we're searching for the lost church. And over the years, when Jesus started the church, over the years, some really nice, beautiful things have grown up around the church. Some really useful, helpful things. But in the midst of all these nice, pretty things, somewhere along the way, we can forget the real essential things of the church. And so what we've been doing is we've been digging up the church. We've been excavating the church, and we've been finding, by going through the first 6 chapters of Acts, what were some of the relics, some of the things that maybe we've forgotten. And so the first week, we dug up this golden bowl. And in Acts 1, we talked about how the early church was a praying church. And we talked about where our prayers go in heaven. In Revelation chapter 5 and Revelation 8, there is a picture there that there are golden bowls that contain the prayers of the saints. And so we talked about how we need to pray so that these prayers can be collected in heaven. God can have them mixed with the coals and the fire from the altar poured out upon the earth as answered prayer. And so we talked about prayer. Now the second week, we found 2 things. We found soil, good soil, and we found seed, good seed. And we talked about how in the Bible, people were often talked about when people were receptive to the gospel and had fertile hearts. They were like good soil. And God's word and God's spirit is like good seed. And when seed is mixed with good soil, that is what is called salvation. And it begins to take root. And in the early church, there were 3,000 people who came to be saved, but they didn't just leave them alone. What did they do? They put them together. They put them, first of all, in prayer. And then we also watered that soil, and we also saw that in the watering and helping it to grow, there was discipleship, there was teaching, there was fellowship, all of those things that helped the seed to grow in the soil. Now, last week, Phil found this thing, and we saw what this was. They didn't stay in the prayer meeting, did they? They didn't stay in their little group. Like the salt of the earth, they were to spread out and to be sprinkled all over that culture. And so that's what we talked about last week when they got out of the prayer meeting and they went to the very center of where the opposition was and they preached the gospel. Well, what I want you to see, though, is that when you actually begin to get out of the prayer meeting, out of the gathering, out into the world, scary things can happen. Now, by the way, that's exactly what we've been talking about in this church. If you know what we talk about here, we talk about connecting to Christ, remember? Now, what is connecting to Christ? That's a picture of salvation. The idea there is that the seed comes into contact with the soil. So we connect to Christ. But then we take that new person, that picture of salvation, we immerse them in prayer, we put them into fellowship, we put them into life groups, we put them into discipleship, we begin to water them. That's called connecting to Christ. But then we don't leave them there. We put them out into the world. That is called connecting to the world. And when you genuinely and really connect to the world, I'm telling you, scary things can happen. Now, let's take a look and see. We've got some archaeologists over here. Let's see who these are, first of all. Would you guys stand up? Now, what is your name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. And who are you, young man?
Harrison.
He's Harrison. Harrison, folks. In fact, he thinks he's Indiana Jones because his name is Harrison. So he's going to demonstrate something for us. He's got a whip here. Can you show us how to use that whip? All right. Wow. That's dangerous. And that's enough. Okay, let's move ahead. Now, let's see what we got here. Okay? Let's see. Okay, you guys, there's some white stuff. What is that? Come on, let's pull on that. Let's see if we can pull this out. Oh, come on. Oh my goodness! What is that? Well, that's a mummy. Harrison, do you have something to say?
I want my mummy.
Okay, there you go. You can go. Yeah, his dad didn't give him that line, of course. No. Thank you, guys. Let's give them a hand as they go out.